Welcome guys, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James and this is your latest Rangers news, guys. Look, let's face it, it has not been a great start to the season, no matter how you dress this one up. It's all just been a little bit poor, a little bit underperformance, a little bit just pathetic from a number of players. One player who has come in for an awful lot of criticism since his move from Bournemouth to Rangers is not Max Aarons but midfielder Joe Rothwell. Joe Rothwell described as really struggling to make the adaptation from playing in the English Championship to Rangers, and I think there's a number of pundits and analysts who are all saying that Rangers are becoming too over-reliant on championship players. And I think one of the biggest fears many of us had, and if you go back and look at my videos, I did actually highlight this in one of the videos, which was that, is it wise to be shopping solely in one market? Should you not be looking at multiple markets and bringing in players from a number of different markets and a number of different leagues to kind of, in a way, hedge your bets as to, whether or not that those players are going to work out? When you put all your eggs in one basket, as Rangers have done realistically with a lot of players coming in for the English Championship, you are kind of really putting yourselves out there to, either be a massive success or a huge failure. Now, like I said, one player who has been massively underperforming is Joe Rothwell. Now, former Rangers player and current Sky Sports pundit Kris Boyd has been raging at Joe Rothwell after a recent Sky Sports interview, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll also talk at a very interesting article I was reading in one of the Leeds United fanzines, Leeds United websites, around Joe Rothwell and why he may well be struggling for Rangers, and perhaps something we didn't really realise when we signed him, that's kind of come to, when it's been looked into and when you kind of look at how he was used at Leeds, maybe shows you why our over-reliance on him, or let's say Russell Martin's over-reliance on him in that number 6 position, really does tell a story as to why he is failing, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Now, Kris Boyd said this. Now, Joe Rothwell was obviously interviewed post the St Mirren game, and in that interview, he talked about the fact that they dropped points because, in his words, we didn't win enough second balls. Which immediately got former Rangers striker Kris Boyd absolutely raging at the man. This is what Boyd had to say. He says, that interview there was pretty damning for me as well. Joe Rothwell is talking about St Mirren picking up second balls that they were first to. That is your job. You're in that midfield. That is what you were brought in for. You're meant to be the guy that is going into the box, that is picking the second balls up. Now, yes, Rothwell is the guy who plays in that 6 role. Rothwell is the guy who's supposed to break up attacks, who's supposed to win the second balls, to do the recoveries. That's what a 6 is there for. And Rothwell has really failed absolutely spectacularly to do that since his move to the club. He's really struggling not only in the European games, but also domestically as well, and often looks absolutely spent after only a few minutes. Well, only about half. Let's give him a benefit of half an hour, 40 minutes. He looks absolutely finished, looks absolutely knackered. And unable to do that number 6 job. Now, what is the big shame, obviously, here is that, Nicholas Raskin played a lot of games last season as that 6, and he was by far one of the best players in Scotland, if not arguably in Europe, when he did it for the Belgian national team as well, at playing that 6 role. He's been moved out of that 6 role to accommodate Joe Rothwell, and I think the Rangers midfield has substantially suffered by trying to crowbar in Rothwell into that role. Now, Boydy's right. It's Rothwell's job. He should be doing it. And to stand there and say we didn't win enough second balls, well, actually, mate, you should be saying I didn't win enough second balls. Might be a better, more closer statement, mate. So I think, to be honest with you, it's a bit of a, Boydy is absolutely spot on with what he's got to say, and he's right to be absolutely fuming at Joe Rothwell. Now, like I said, what's behind all this? Let's go back 3 months, shall we, to the end of the Championship season, and when Leeds had won promotion to the Championship, from the Championship, back to the Premier League in fantastic fashion. There was a lot of Leeds fans calling on the owners to sign Joe Rothwell on a permanent basis from Bournemouth for Leeds, which obviously, was something that was obviously considered. But however, upon consideration from Daniel Farke, from Greta Steinson, and obviously Parag Marathe, it was decided that they wouldn't progress with this, and this was not something they would do. So Rothwell obviously was allowed to return to Bournemouth, but the 49ers saw him as having a role to play, and no doubt on Greta Steinson's advice as well, Kevin Thelwell acted and signed Rothwell for Rangers, which now could prove to be a mistake. Now, he didn't obviously cost a lot of money, so it's not like it's a massive amount of money wasted. And he has played all 9 games for the club. Former Rangers goalkeeper Cammy Bell has also been criticising the player as well. He said another thing that hasn't worked in his squad, in his favour, in terms of Russell Martin, are his signings. Joe Rothwell, I thought he'd do really well. He's really struggled. The pressure looks like it's getting to him. He hasn't lived up to what I expected to come and do because of his pedigree down south. So, you know, the pressure, the limelight of playing for Rangers really doesn't seem to suit Rothwell. Now, you'd think that maybe coming from Leeds United, which is a big club in England, which is a club with a very demanding fan base, which is a club that has a lot of history, a lot of pedigree in the English game, you'd have some pressure there as well. But as we know, nothing quite resembles the pressure that Rangers players are under week in, week out. But it is kind of telling. Now, Leeds fans were kind of questioned and asked, why is it you think Rothwell's struggling so much? What is it about him that is not enabling him to really show off what you saw from him in that English Championship that a number of Leeds fans absolutely raved about this player? Well, it's that Rangers at the moment are really struggling to dominate games. They're really struggling to dominate games domestically and also in Europe. Obviously, Panathinaikos, unlucky not to beat us. Plitzen, unlucky not to beat us in the second leg. Brugge gave us a football lesson at Ibrox. You know, so European-wise, we have really struggled and we have not dominated those games. Domestically as well, we've really struggled. It's only been when we've gone 1-0 down and we're doing the whole throw as much shit at the wall and see what sticks kind of mentality that we do seem to get some sort of element of control of those games. You know, Rothwell's ability to create something out of nothing can produce a bit of magic, you know, really should be something that is key to us moving forward. But like I said, he's made exceptionally hard work of that. Now, if you go back and review his time with Leeds, yes, he did very well at Leeds. Yes, he was a success at Leeds. But it's worth noting that last year, if you go back to when Rothwell was really excelling in games for Leeds, it was a point when Leeds were dominating, controlling Championship games. They were head and shoulders at times above some of the competition in the games that Rothwell really shone in. Something that Rangers have not done. Rothwell hasn't got that kind of easy ride in this domestic football in Scotland. The intensity, the pressure, the pace, the aggression, he would not have experienced last season when Leeds were having that dominance, that control of the ball and that positive attacking control of the ball, not just controlling the ball for controlling ball's sake. Now, if you review Rangers, yes, a lot of times we're getting 60-70% possession in games, but we're doing bugger all with it, just passing it sideways and backwards, which is not particularly, you know, useful, and it does invite pressure onto yourself. Also, if you go back and look at the games that were, you would say, were the tricky games, the games where Leeds were playing an equal to them, someone who would give them a difficult time, Daniel Farke often didn't start Rothwell and didn't play him. Take, for example, the 0-0 draw away at Burnley. Farke used Ilya Gruev instead of Rothwell. You know, and he did that a number of times. He did that a number of times in a number of those big games. So, you know, is there an element of that Farke saw something in Rothwell that when he felt the pressure would be on, when someone of an equal standard came, he didn't think Rothwell could kind of cope with it, and he could only cope in games where, you know, there would be a dominance from Leeds over a weaker opponent. Now, realistically, yes, arguably Rangers should have that week in, week out, because realistically, arguably against St Mirren, against Dundee, against Motherwell, we should be dominating those games, but we're not. We're playing poorly. That is partly obviously down to the players, which we know, and is also down to the fact the manager is genuinely bloody dreadful. He can't organise the team. He can't get the team playing effectively. He just looks very poor indeed. So, look, there's kind of a story behind this one, as well as obviously that example of Boydy not happy with what Rothwell's got to say. I honestly think that Rothwell is really, really struggling. And I honestly think the best thing is to take him out of the team. He does not look a player. He does not look good enough to be a starter ahead of Raskan in that 6 role. Even, I would say, ahead of Connor Barron in that 6 role. I honestly would argue that if you put Raskan in that 6 role, Connor Barron in that 6 role, you would actually strengthen the team rather than weaken it by taking Rothwell out. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.